For centuries, wealth and power had been concentrated in the east of Scotland. Now, money and influence were moving west, to a growing city with access to the Atlantic. Glasgow. The Scottish commissioners, who had negotiated the Act of Union back in 1706, had demanded access to what they called the dominions and plantations, by which they had meant the English colonies in North America and the Caribbean. Before the Union, the Scots, at least officially, had been locked out of this colonial trade. But now they were no longer English colonies, but part of a British empire, to which the Scots, as British subjects, had equal access. So traders, soldiers, and adventurers from across Scotland threw their energies into the opportunities that came with access to empire. And no city did better than Glasgow.
Glasgow was in the perfect position to make the most of trade with the colonies, because this river, the Clyde, flows westwards out into the Atlantic towards the colonies. And once the ships of Glasgow's merchants reached the ocean, they were met by the trade winds that carried them rapidly across the Atlantic. And what that meant was that the journey times between Glasgow and the colonies was often faster than between the colonies and other British ports, which meant that the costs of trade were lower and the profits higher. And so, in the decades after the Union, the merchants of Glasgow established new trading partnerships with plantation owners and middlemen on the islands of the Caribbean and in the colonies in North America. And together, they traded in sugar, rum, cotton, and tobacco.
By the latter 18th century, around half of all tobacco imported into Britain came through Glasgow. It created huge profits that have left a mark on the urban landscape.
This is Miller Street in the centre of Glasgow, and that's number 42. And that building is special because it's all that's left of the original Miller Street, built back in the 1770s. And Miller Street was a parade of these grand mansions built for the very rich, and many of them became homes of the city's tobacco merchants, the so-called tobacco lords of Glasgow. A very tight-knit community, a small number of families who often intermarried, and they shared information, and they dominated the trade in tobacco. Number 42 was home to one of them, Robert Findlay, who'd grown rich on his connections with tobacco growers in Virginia and Maryland.
Other street names in the area: Jamaica Street, Virginia Street, Tobago Street. All are reminders of colonies in America and the Caribbean where tobacco was grown. But these same street names are also a reminder of something else. The hundreds of thousands of enslaved Africans who lived, worked, and died on the tobacco and sugar plantations that made Georgian Glasgow wealthy.